Welcome back to Things That Are Harder. Today we're going to talk about credits. Credits seem pretty easy, don't they? You get a list of names, you put them on a screen or something, and you're done. But as we break down each of those things, you'll see there is complexity every step of the way. First thing, whose names go on that list? Well, everyone who worked on the game, right? But what's work on the game mean? Is there a minimum amount of time someone had to work on the game before you put them in the credits? Do they have to be on the game for 3 months, 6 months, a year? What if they are in a central group? Or they answer the phones, or they are the people who keep the computers running? Do you put them in the credits? And now that you've figured that out, and you've got your list, well, what order do you put them in? Do you just list everyone in alphabetical order? Do you give people titles based upon what they worked on and the discipline that they do? And who gets to decide what titles are used? And finally, the screen itself. Is it just a scrolling list of names? Are there some static images at the start? Do you want to do something fancier? You need to answer all of these questions before you can make your credits. So let's dig in a little bit on each of those three things. Who goes on your list? Most companies have some sort of policy about who gets into the credits. If you don't have a policy, I recommend that you get one in place as quickly as you can, because this is not the sort of thing you want to be negotiating as you're filing a game. At BioWare, you needed to work on a game for 3 months before you got into the credits, and after 6 months, I believe you got a full credit as opposed to an additional credit. Different companies have different policies. Some companies have very, very draconian policies that require you to be on the project when it's shipped to be in the credits. Some require you to have worked crunch to get into the credits. I don't agree with these policies. If you've worked on the game and you had a significant impact upon the game, you should be in the credits in some form at least. But that does raise another question. What if you worked on the game a long time ago? Maybe you were a character artist and you made some models 2-3 years ago, but the game direction has shifted and none of those models are still in the game. Should you get a credit then? You want to have a policy in place that makes it clear how you are giving out credits. My general policy for all of these questions, for all of these topics, is that credits are free to give out and that you should, in general, be generous with the credits. Okay, let's do this. I'll give you the rules that I would use for establishing your list of names. Get everyone who's worked on the project. Use 3 months as a minimum amount of time to get an additional credit. Use 6 months to get a full credit. Under 3 months, if they had a significant impact on the project, consider giving them a special thanks or some special credit that sits apart from the other more formal credit system. You should credit your central staff, your secretaries, your IT, all of those departments that keep your project and studio running. It does mean that some of these people could get a lot of credits, but there's nothing wrong with that. It almost went without saying, but I will say it just to be crystal clear. Every single person who's doing QV on your project should be credited. Similar to that, I would, if possible, credit your outsourcers. This isn't always possible. It will depend on the specific relationship you have with that outsourcer, but it's a nice gesture. If somebody worked on the project a long time ago and all their content is gone, probably you should still give them a credit, though under extraordinary circumstances, you might want to consider against that. Make sure that you spell the person's name right and use their preferred form of their name. Use Mike if they prefer Mike to Michael. This isn't something you want to get wrong. That said, generally don't use goofy nicknames because that's just complicated and is something that is sort of permanent. So typically use their preferred form of normal address, regardless of what that form actually is. That will give you a list of names, but now you need to think about how you're going to display that list, the titles you're going to use, the order that list is going to appear in. On one extreme, you could just list everyone in alphabetical order. Some developers do exactly that. It's equitable. Everyone is treated equally, or at least the only inequity is caused by the first letter of your last name. But you have to consider that people who are new to the industry aren't getting much benefit from this credit. That may be your goal, but it's hard to put something on your resume if you're just in an alphabetically sorted list of devs. So you probably want some more specificity about what the people worked on. But you can go too far the other direction. If you look at Baldur's Gate 1, any specific area of the game that could be articulated by someone while the credits were being made was, and the person's name was attached to that. In fact, I'm pretty sure that I appear in the Baldur's Gate 1 credits 3 separate times because as things were broken down, I ended up being in 3 different areas of the game. I don't think you want that either, both because it makes your credits incredibly long, but also because you can end up in this sort of title arms race where people are trying to come up with different segments and aspects of the game in order to get their name in the credits more than once. As a general rule, you want to have a policy where people can only be in the credits one time at most. So for me, the sort and titles goes like this. You do have some of your most senior people up front, your executive producer, the leaders of each of your discipline, your most senior production staff. Then everyone else is sorted by discipline and sub-discipline. For sub-disciplines, you want to mostly go with the sub-disciplines that are commonly understood. Level art, level design, character art, audio engineer, these sorts of things. You may have to come up with a few specialized ones, but if there's only a single person in one of these special sub-disciplines, consider whether that person could be slotted into one of the other sub-disciplines, just to avoid bloat. Leaders should be called out. I like having them at the top of their sub-discipline with a dash lead after their name. It's nice and tight, but you could consider having them in a separate section. Again, that does make the credits longer. I like a special thanks section, and I also like having a dev babies section for the babies of staff members who were born during development of the game. Those are completely optional. Each person can only appear in the credits a single time. If you have a person who worked on very divergent things, then it should be obvious which area they contributed the most to, put them there. If not, maybe have them choose which of the 2 possibilities they want to appear under. Avoid putting people in the credits more than once. On the topic of people who have left the company, I think you should give them a credit. Under almost all circumstances, they should get whatever credit they would have gotten if they were still at the company. Except, I don't think you should give them a lead credit for their sub-discipline, except in some situations where they left that leadership position very close to the finaling of the project. I think the title of leader should be going to the last person on the ground. So if you leave a project in the middle and you were a lead level designer, you should get a level design credit, but I don't believe you should get a lead level design credit. That credit should pass to the person who leads the team at the point you enter finaling. That's a pretty controversial take, but that's my stance. Anyone on the central teams goes in a section at the end. And then if you have a publisher, those credits go last. After all your credits, after all your central teams, after everything else, you put the publisher credits. Well, actually last will be your legally required credits. So your middleware like Dolby or Renderware, as well as potentially you have to call out the tax credits that you may have benefited from if you're in a region that actually provided tax credits. And then you have your list in an order. Final thing is, how are you going to display those credits? Most games start with very pie-in-the-sky dreams about interactive credits or fun credits or credits that are a movie or credits that are a minigame. Some games do this, but most games set that ambition aside along the way because it's work, and this is something that most of your players are not going to engage with, so you have to really think about whether or not it's worth the effort to do these special credits. It can be. If you're a small game, those special over-the-top credits can get you extra attention. But in most cases, for most games, it's not worth the investment, and you'll end up with something that is a scrolling list. Most recent Bioware games have had several full screen credits for the most senior people on the project, followed by a scrolling list. Honestly, I think in most cases, that's about as far as you want to take it. If you really want to do more than that, my suggestion is to schedule it very early so that you get it done before the pressures of the project squeeze it out of existence. You can spend as much effort as you want, but because it's a low priority feature, chances are it's not something that you're going to be able to fully invest in. So make sure you have a fallback so that you actually have credits when things get squeezed and time runs out. In the movies, there are entire companies whose entire job is making credits for movies. This isn't how it works in games, but that gives you an idea of how much effort can go into making credits really cool. Credits are one of my most hated features. In the making of this video, I've had to examine the reasons for that. And I think it's two things. The first is that for a long time, I've been in a position where I haven't really been very attached to my particular credits. I've been an executive producer now for quite a long time. As a result, it doesn't really matter what it says my title was in the credits. Everyone already knows the job that I did on a project. But of course, that's not true of everyone that works on your project. The second reason that I find them very annoying is that they are a very high emotion, high stakes conversation for some people on your team, and it occurs at a moment in time where emotions are already incredibly high. You're trying to finish a game, you might be crunching, and now you're asking people to examine their own contributions to the game and the way that they're going to be remembered for what they did on your game. So of course, emotions can run high for some people, because some people can put a lot of themselves into the words it says beside their name in the credits. If you are a relatively junior person in the industry, credits are your foot in the door. They are how you potentially get your next job. So my policy is be generous with your credits, have a policy in place early on so people understand what their credit is going to look like, but even still, you are going to spend a lot of time in the final days of your project dealing with people who want their title to be different, who want their credit to better reflect what they feel like they contributed to the game. Sometimes those conversations can be hard ones. I hope this gave you a little peek behind the curtain of one of my most hated features in all of games, credits. If you found this interesting or useful, please give this a thumbs up so more people can see it. I will see you again soon. Thank you.